Did you know that some of the most legendary boxers have been involved in serious crimes outside the ring? From Bobby Czyz's tragic fall to Adrien Broner's controversial behavior, here are some boxing legends accused of serious crimes. 1. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson is one of the all-time greatest boxers. They called him Iron Mike, and he became the youngest heavyweight champion in history at 20 years old. He was a knockout machine with his aggression, power, and speed, and he was, for a short time, invincible. But off the ring, his life was chaos. It was in the early 1990s that Tyson was convicted of a severe assault of an 18-year-old beauty pageant contestant. The incident was highly publicized, and even though he was protesting his innocence, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. He spent nearly 3 years before being paroled. Despite being released, however, Tyson's issues did not subside. He had several encounters, one of which included biting Evander Holyfield's ear during a fight, leading to his being suspended from the sport for some time. He also struggled with drug addiction, finances, and continued run-ins with the authorities. Though his past, Tyson has tried his best to repair his image. Nowadays, he is a podcast host, an actor, and an entrepreneur. While his criminal past is a black mark in his history, the majority of fans are happy to see him trying to mend his ways. But it is beyond question that he remains one of the sport's most polarizing personalities. 2. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is the greatest boxer of all time. With a 50-0 undefeated career, Mayweather dominated the sport with his defensive skills and the means to outthink foes. He built one of the greatest athletic wealth of all time, earning hundreds of millions from fights against stars Manny Pacquiao and Conor McGregor. However, outside of the ring, Mayweather has had many domestic violence accusations leveled against him. Over the years, many women have openly accused him of physically assaulting them. In 2011, he was imprisoned for 90 days for punching the mother of his children in front of their children. Nevertheless, he served about 2 months before being released due to good behavior. Mayweather has preferred to sweep his legal troubles under the rug, opting instead to utilize his boxing success and wealth. However, many critics argue that his domestic violence has been forgotten because of his success. While he is a legend within the sport of boxing, his history continues to fuel debate regarding whether or not athletes are held more accountable for their actions. 3. Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston was the most intimidating heavyweight of his time. His massive size, bruising punches, and hard-as-steel demeanor scared opponents. His most famous fight was against Muhammad Ali, then Cassius Clay, in which he remarkably lost, and conspiracy theories exist around whether or not the fight was fixed. But Liston's troubles started long before his years as a boxing great. As a young man, he was charged with robbery and assault and was arrested multiple times. He was in jail, and even as a champion, he was rumored to have organized crime connections. The majority believe that his criminal contacts followed him throughout his professional career and may have led to his premature demise. Liston was found lifeless in 1970 in suspicious circumstances. It was reportedly listed as an overdose, but everyone believes that he was murdered because he hung around some poor company. 4. Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was among the all-time great boxers. In 1908, he was the first black heavyweight champion, breaking racial barriers when segregation was the law of the land in America. He was a flashy, arrogant brawler who did not want to live by society's rules, especially when it came to love. At a time when interracial dating was considered taboo, Johnson openly dated and married white women. This placed him in the sights of the police. In 1913, he was convicted under the Mann Act, a law making it illegal to transport a woman across state lines for immoral purposes. Most believe that this charge was racially charged, since the law was often used to convict black men who dated white women. Rather than heading to jail, Johnson fled to another nation and spent years living in Europe and South America. He finally made it back to the U.S. in 1920 and spent nearly a year in jail. However, he still boxed and was a stubborn man until he passed away in 1946. It took over 100 years more for Johnson to finally get his justice. In 2018, the U.S. government issued a posthumous pardon of his conviction, which they realized was unjust. Today, he is a legend who stood against racism and transformed boxing for eternity. 5. Carlos Monzon. Carlos Monzon was one of the greatest middleweight boxers ever. He was born in Argentina and became the middleweight champion without dispute, and held his title for 7 years and won 59 consecutive fights. He was renowned for his punching power, endurance, and ability to take punches. But beyond the ring, Monzon had a dark side. Beyond it, he was violent, especially with women. He had an anger and short fuse that got him into trouble, but nothing startled him more than in 1988. In that year, Monzon was detained for assassinating his wife, Alicia Muniz. The relationship of the couple was turbulent, with frequent altercations and accusations of violence. One evening, after one of their battles, Monzon strangled her and tossed her off a balcony, mortally wounding her. Monzon was arrested and subsequently sentenced to homicide for 11 years in jail. While in prison, Monzon was allowed short periods of release to work outside the prison. On one such outing in 1995, he passed away from a car crash at the age of 52. While his professional boxing career was amazing, his legacy is forever tarnished by his criminal deed. 6. Rubin Carter. Rubin. Hurricane Carter was an overpowering middleweight boxer who was once a budding world champion. His lightning-quick hands and intimidating fighting tactics endeared him to the crowds. But his career was brutally short-lived when he was unjustly accused of having committed a crime. Carter was also arrested for triple homicide in 1966 at a New Jersey tavern. Although he had no hard evidence against him, he was given a life sentence. It is felt that his conviction was race-driven, as Carter was an outspoken black male during times of growing racial animosity. For nearly 20 years, Carter fought to prove his innocence. His case became famous after Bob Dylan sang about his unfounded incarceration in his hit song, Hurricane. Celebrities, activists, and lawyers took on his cause, and his conviction was finally overturned in 1985 after years of appeals. By the time Carter was released, he had lost 20 years of his life, and his career in boxing was at an end. But that didn't discourage him from doing what he could. He devoted the remainder of his life to battling on behalf of other wrongly accused individuals, telling his story in order to highlight injustice. He passed away in 2014, but his name continues to serve as a forceful reminder of justice and endurance. 7. Jake LaMotta. Jake LaMotta, also known as the Raging Bull, was quite possibly the most formidable boxer of his era. He was known for having a rough, murderous style, incredible stamina, and the ability to take punch upon punch without ever surrendering. He became the world middleweight champion and had a legendary rivalry with Sugar Ray Robinson. But in life outside of the ring, LaMotta's was just as wild as his fights. He lived a fast and dangerous lifestyle, being involved in gambling, crime, and even the mafia. In one of the biggest boxing scandals in history, LaMotta admitted to throwing a fight in 1947. He plotted to lose on purpose for a chance at the championship down the line. Boxing, too, was controlled by the mob during those days, and this translated into fighters doing as they pleased if they wanted to succeed. The LaMotta confession was an enormous scandal and put the sport's corruption under the spotlight. Later in his life, LaMotta did regret his involvement, but now it was too late. Even with his brilliant career, his name will always be linked with one of boxing's greatest scandals. His life was so dramatic that it was turned into the classic movie Raging Bull, starring Robert De Niro. While LaMotta passed away in 2017, his story remains one of the most debated in boxing history. 8. Mitch Green. Mitch Green was a wild, trash-talking heavyweight boxer. He was quite a fighter, but everybody remembers him for the legendary street brawl with Mike Tyson rather than for his ring life. Green had a solid start to his career in the ring, even competing for the heavyweight championship. But ultimately, he became better known for his out-of-control lifestyle than for his boxing. He amassed many legal issues, including a series of arrests for drug-related charges that kept him in and out of prison. His most widely publicized off-ring moment was in 1988, when he got into a street fight with Mike Tyson outside a Harlem clothing store. The fight was not in a ring, a literal fist fight that found Green sporting a puffy face and black eye. The fight became legendary and people still mention it today. Unfortunately, Green's career suffered as his personal problems and legal issues took over. His legal and drug problems prevented him from reaching his full potential in the ring. Today, he's remembered as a great fighter who let his problems get in the way of greatness. 9. James Butler. James Butler's is one of the most tragic and horrific tales in the history of boxing. He was a gifted boxer, the Harlem Hammer, with a two-way punch. He enjoyed an extremely good career start, winning fights and making headlines. But all this was altered in 2001. Having lost a fight to Richard Grant, Butler did something unprecedented. Rather than shake hands after the bout, he punched Grant in the face with a bare fist, breaking his jaw. The act was considered one of the worst instances of unsportsmanlike behavior in the annals of boxing. It was the beginning of the downfall of Butler. He was taken into custody and jailed for assaulting her. They only got worse in 2006, however, when he committed a more horrible crime. Butler was convicted of killing a sports writer, Sam Kellerman, who had been helping him revive his career. The crime was brutal, and Butler received a 29-year prison term. It was a tragic fall for a boxer who had held such promise. James Butler is remembered today not for what he could do in the ring, but for the horrible crime he committed. His is a terrible story of how anger and violence can lead to tragedy. 10. Edwin Valero. Edwin Valero was the most exciting pugilist of his generation. The Venezuelan boxer had a record of 27 wins, a clean sweep with all of his victories coming via knockout. He had a gigantic following due to his street fighter's style of fighting and unparalleled punching power. He was the world champion in two weight divisions and was well positioned to become one of the game's biggest celebrities. However, outside the ring, Valero's life was also in disarray. He had problems with drugs and alcohol, and his behavior grew increasingly aggressive. In 2010, it took a devastating turn when he was accused of killing his wife, Jennifer Carolina Vieira de Valero. He reportedly admitted to committing the crime before he could be arrested. Hours later, in police custody, Valero was found lifeless in his cell. Authorities said it was a suicide, but there are many questions about what happened. His rapid decline left fans stunned. How did a talented fighter allow everything to slip away from his hands? 11. Joey Giardello. Joey Giardello was one of the greatest middleweight fighters of his era. A rugged and talented fighter, he captured the World Middleweight Championship in 1963 by defeating Dick Tiger. He defended his title successfully before losing to Emil Griffith. However, while Giardello was respected for his skills in the ring, his name was also often linked to organized crime. Boxing in the mid-20th century was rife with the influence of the mafia, and most boxers had connections with underworld individuals who controlled the sport. Though Giardello was never found guilty of any major crimes, there were whispers that he had been engaged in illegal activities like fight fixing and consorting with gangsters. In addition to his alleged mob ties, Giardello also had run-ins with the law for more minor offenses. He was involved in some legal battles throughout his life, but nothing ever stuck long enough to slow down his career. Despite the scandals, Giardello remained a highly respected boxing personage. He was voted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and many still consider him one of the all-time great middleweights. But his name will always be marred by the criminal type that once had a stranglehold on boxing. 12. Tony Ayala Jr. Tony Ayala Jr. was once a promising boxing future star. He went professional at the age of 17 and immediately gained fame for his big bomb punching and in-your-face way of fighting. Everybody believed that he was going to be a world champion. But Ayala's promising career was abruptly ended when in 1983 he was convicted of assaulting someone. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison at the age of 19. It was his first violent offense conviction. But he also had a history of abusing women and getting into trouble outside the ring. His long prison sentence ended what could have been a Hall of Fame boxing career. After serving 16 years in prison, Ayala was released and tried to get back into the boxing ring. But he was not the same boxer anymore. The years spent in prison had taken their toll on him, and he was unable to recapture his former glory. Tragically, Ayala's legal problems did not end there. He continued to get arrested on drug possession and other charges. In 2015, he was found lifeless from a suspected overdose. His life was one of the greatest what-if stories in boxing history. What if he had not gotten himself into so much trouble? Could he have been one of the all-time greats? 13. Ike Ibebuchi. Ike Ibebuchi was, at one point, the future of the heavyweight division. The Nigerian-born fighter sported a 20-0 record, most of his wins coming by knockout. He was renowned for his dynamite blows and never-say-die attitude, and box enthusiasts believed that he had what it takes to become a world champion. However, his career took a dark turn when his violent behavior outside the ring landed him in serious trouble. Ibebuchi's problems started in the late 1990s. In 1997, he was accused of kidnapping and assaulting the teenage son of his ex-girlfriend. According to reports, he locked the boy in a car trunk after an argument. Fortunately, the teenager managed to escape, but the incident raised concerns about Ibebuchi's mental state. Instead of being bothered with his career as a boxer, he began to behave more and more strangely. He would inform individuals that he had heard voices and became aggressive toward others. The majority believe he suffered from untreated mental illness, but he never received the attention he needed. Things took a turn for the worse in 1999 when Ibebuchi was accused of physical assaulting a woman in Las Vegas. The victim, an escort, claimed he raped her in a hotel room. When police arrived, Ibebuchi barricaded himself in the bathroom and refused to come out. After a standoff with the police, he was finally arrested and charged with assault and attempted physical assault. He was later convicted and sentenced to serve over a decade in prison. By the time he was released in 2015, his career as a boxer was over. Although he talked of going back into the ring, matters of legality and immigration ensured that he never set foot in the ring again. His story became one of potential lost as a champion at least, but a future lost on him because of his own doing. 14. Trevor Berbick. Trevor Berbick was a boxing household name, famous for being the final boxer to fight Muhammad Ali and for winning the WBC heavyweight title in 1986. Born in Jamaica, he had a successful career in the ring, defeating some of the best fighters of his time. However, his life outside the ring was marred by run-ins with the law. Berbick's highlight came in 1986 when he defeated Pinklon Thomas to gain the WBC heavyweight title. His title reign was short-lived, however. Later in 1986, he fought a young Mike Tyson, who brutally knocked him out in the second round. This made Tyson the youngest heavyweight champion in history and sent Berbick's career into decline. As he struggled to stay competitive in boxing, Berbick's personal life outside of the ring became increasingly volatile. In the 1990s, Berbick had numerous run-ins with the law. He was found guilty of assault and other charges, landing him in jail. One of the more severe charges leveled against him was physical assault, for which he served 15 months in prison. After his release, Berbick's legal issues did not abate. In 2002, he was deported from the United States to Jamaica due to his criminal record. This brought a halt to his North American stay, where he had fought most of his boxing career. Even after returning to his home country, Berbick's troubles didn't stop. In 2006, he was brutally assassinated in Jamaica. Reports say he was assassinated over a land dispute with a relative. His demise shocked the boxing world and brought a tragic end to the life of a former champion. 15. Paul Spadafora. Paul Spadafora was boxing's next best hope. A Pennsylvania native, he gained recognition early in his career with his quickness and defensive skills. He captured the IBF Lightweight Championship in 1999 and defended his title for years without a loss. Nicknamed the Pittsburgh Kid, many believed he had what it took to be one of the greatest of all time. However, his career turned bitter due to his violent eruptions outside the ring. It was in the year 2003 that Spadafora was at the peak of his career when he was arrested for having shot his girlfriend, Nadine Rousseau. This was after a fight at a gas station. He was said to have been drunk and became violent, eventually pulling out a gun and shooting her in the stomach. She fortunately lived, but the damage was already there, both to her and to Spadafora's reputation. Spadafora was convicted of attempted murder and incarcerated in 2005. The incarceration lost him the prime years of his boxing life. Despite serving his time, Spadafora was not able to stay out of trouble. He had numerous encounters with the law throughout the years for DUI, assault, and drug possession. Every time he seemed ready to turn his life around, he would fall back into destructive habits. Despite all his problems, Spadafora attempted a comeback in boxing. His unbeaten run was intact for years, but by the time he returned, he was no longer the same boxer. He fought his final professional bout in 2014 and gradually faded away from the scene. 16. Ricardo Mayorga. If there was ever a wild boxer in and out of the ring, it was Ricardo Mayorga. Nicaraguan-born Mayorga became a household name with his vicious style of fighting, boasts, and irresponsible antics. He won world titles in 2 weight classes and was known for his knockout punch. Whereas most boxers try to lead decent lives, Mayorga embraced his bad boy image. He would smoke during press conferences, party too much, and fight even outside the ring. Some loved him, some hated him, but no one could deny that he brought excitement to boxing. Unfortunately, his lack of responsibility led to serious legal issues. Mayorga's legal troubles began at the start of his career, but his most serious charges were in 2017 when he was arrested for physically attacking a woman in Nicaragua. The victim accused him of punching her and threatening to kill her. This was not the first time that Mayorga was said to have been violent outside the ring. He had been accused several times throughout his career of domestic violence and even banned from competing in some areas due to his reputation. While he was gifted, Mayorga's behavior tended to hurt his career more often than not. He took fights on short notice, did not prepare well, and relied only on his raw power rather than finesse. While he became a world champion many times, he could never stay at the top for extended periods. He suffered brutal losses to boxing icons like Oscar de la Hoya, Shane Mosley, and Miguel Cotto. 17. Esteban de Jesus. Esteban de Jesus was one of the best boxers from Puerto Rico. He possessed quick reflexes, lightning-fast jabs, and was afraid of no man. He fought the best fighters of his day. His most famous win was when he beat legendary boxer Roberto Duran in 1972 for Duran's first loss as a professional. This put him on the national radar screen, and he soon became a natural top contender at lightweight. De Jesus won the WBC Lightweight Championship in 1976, proving that he was not a one-hit wonder. His followers admired his technical skill and heart for fighting, and it seemed that he was on his way to boxing greatness. But while his career was rising, his life was spinning out of control. De Jesus was hooked on drugs by the early 1980s. Cocaine use led him down a path of negativity, and in 1981, he did something that caused shockwaves within the world of boxing. During an altercation, De Jesus drew a gun and shot a man in the head and killed him. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. It was a calamitous fall from glory for a champion boxer. Instead of being remembered as a phenomenal boxer, his name became that of a criminal and an icon of violence. In his time in prison, de Jesus' life also went in another tragic direction. He contracted HIV, very likely from drug use, and his health dramatically deteriorated. In 1985, having spent 4 years in prison, he was pardoned by the governor of Puerto Rico due to illness. He spent his final years attempting to obtain pardon and again embracing his faith, but his body had been too much damaged. He passed away in 1989 at the age of 37. 18. Scott Harrison. Scott Harrison was once Britain's most exciting boxer. Scotland's rugged brawler emerged a 2-time WBO featherweight champion and earned a name as a rough-hewn, work-rate-a-maniac type of fighter who possessed deathless stamina and constant aggression. He dominated the featherweight division in the early 2000s and was seen as one of the best boxers in the world. Harrison's fights were brutal, and his ability to take punishment while delivering crushing blows earned him the fans' adoration. But while he was a champion in the ring, he struggled outside of boxing. Harrison's downfall wasn't caused by one mistake. It was a string of bad decisions. He had numerous run-ins with the police throughout his life, including for assault, disorderly conduct while intoxicated, and domestic disputes. His worst legal trouble was in 2009 when he was convicted of assault in Spain. By reports, he beat up a man during a fight, and the Spanish government jailed him for 2.5 years. The incident put an end to his boxing career because he lost crucial years behind bars instead of training and fighting. Even after completing his sentence, Harrison still struggled with alcoholism and violence. He had further run-ins with the law, another conviction for attacking an officer being one of them. Harrison did attempt to make a comeback many times, but he was never the same person. All those years of drinking, being in jail, and having problems with the law finally caught up with him. 19. Adrien Broner. Adrien Broner was once the future of big boxing stars. With multiple world championships in different weight classes, he had the talent and attitude to dominate the sport. Everyone enjoyed his flashy style of fighting, his quick hands, and his ability to knock out opponents. But while he was winning fights, he was also getting himself into big legal trouble. Broner has been arrested several times over the years for such offenses, including assault, robbery, and probation violation. He was accused of robbing a man at a bowling alley in 2016 and groping a woman at a club in 2018. His poor choice of lifestyle continued, and he has had financial problems, been an alcoholic, and been in trouble with the law. Despite his issues, Broner continues to try to make boxing comebacks, but his reputation has been greatly damaged. 20. Bobby Czyz. Bobby Czyz was a 2-division world champion and also one of the most hit boxers of his time. He boxed in the 1980s and 1990s and was known as a good fighter with a knockout punch. He was a crowd favorite because of his toughness and perseverance, and he enjoyed a successful career inside the ring. His life outside the ring was much more complicated. After retirement, Czyz's life spiraled downwards. He suffered from alcohol addiction and financial problems, and these led to even bigger problems. He was arrested on DUI charges and also had domestic violence charges. These criminal problems tarnished his reputation and showed that he was suffering from serious personal problems. Czyz's downfall reminds us that even the greatest athletes are prone to severe setbacks in their lives. Even though he was an accomplished champion in the past, his off-the-ring problems overshadowed his success in boxing. While he had been successful earlier in life, his subsequent life became a story of struggle and missed opportunities.